So I know that I am the only thing in between you and the exchange, so I won't labour on any of these points. But we did think once we'd seen how the agenda was coming together that it was important to kind of highlight to everyone how you can start to act on these trends that we're seeing. And we've heard from some really great speakers today what these trends are. So again, I just wanted to sort of highlight a few of the other big trends that I think affect the banking industry more than ever. Now, I'm kind of thinking that the fact that you're all in this room means that you get digital is a big deal. You wouldn't be on the Google invite list if you didn't think that's the case. But, you know, we really have come a huge way, even since, you know, Google was born. And I'm not sure how many of you may have heard that Google has this 300-year mission, right? So we think we've only probably achieved 5% of our goal of making the world's information accessible and useful. And that's because, you know, there's much, much more data being produced every 5 seconds, but it's also because there's a lot of content out there that's not digital. But when you think about where we were 5 or even 10 years ago, the amount of time that people are spending on the web has just grown exponentially, and this is particularly the case in Southeast Asia. And the chart that you can see up there really starts to highlight that from a consumer point of view, a tipping point has happened. People are spending more time now on the internet than they are with any other media. And when you start to combine the effects of a mobile phone and accessing the web on a phone with a desktop, then this is a huge amount of time for you as marketers to start to reach them. So the first how is, how do you translate every single campaign you do into an online campaign? Because if you're simply ticking the boxes and doing print, TV and some outdoor, you're simply ignoring a huge part of where people are spending their media time now. So that's kind of the first how. The second one is really about this theme. Now, if we believe this to be true, if everything is online and everybody is online, then what that means is that your consumers are hyper-informed. Now, I loved that image that Scott showed about the Encyclopedia Britannica, and everyone sort of had a giggle at that. And, you know, when you think about, like, I remember the projects I used to do when I was a kid based on the Encyclopedia Britannica, and they were so one-dimensional, and you'd go to the school and everybody would have the same information as you. You know, this cockatoo is white and it has a yellow flare, and it was pretty much a verbatim of what was in there. Today, you've got kids coming in who's sourcing Google as part of the research project, right? Now, what this means for you guys as bankers and as marketers is that the consumers that are walking into your branches, the consumers that are picking up the phone and calling your call centres are very, very different than they used to be, right? They're not just relying on that one source, the Encyclopedia Britannica of information. They are walking into your branch hyper-informed. They might as well be your competitor's salesperson, right? Now, we're seeing this happen a lot in the auto industry in Australia. So people will go online, do a lot of research and walk into the dealership with a piece of paper with a printout of where they can get that car for a cheaper price. And that's a negotiating tool. Or, you know, there's this phenomenon that we're hearing about called showrooming, right? So people are actually walking into retail outlets, checking out the Marc Jacobs bag and actually buying it on their phone on the way out. They just wanted to touch and feel it in the shop, but then they're going to buy it online. That is a huge shift in how you have to manage these multi-channel interactions that Pierre was talking about. So you have people walking into your store hyper-informed. They have access to your competitors' information in their hand. Ask yourself, are your salespeople and your frontline people ready to deal with that sort of a consumer walking into your branch? Answer, roughly? No, Mel, they're not, are they? So this is a huge thing for training and an organisation as well. You know, we've done some research, and I know William's got some stuff that he can share with you guys as well, but in Australia, close to 80% of people are researching their banking products online. Now, that research was done very late in 2010. I'm sure it's actually a lot higher than it is now. But the really interesting thing, which sort of speaks to this concept of being hyper-informed, is that they're using around 12 sources of information, right? Now, the challenge for you guys is, yeah, you're probably never going to be all 12, but you could probably be 3 or 4 of them. And what it means for you guys is that you have to start investing in content. So the big how for you is to stop basically digitizing the stuff you have, taking the PDS, taking the offer documents, taking your brochures that sit in a branch and whacking up, slaves of copy up on a website, but thinking about how this content can actually help transform the relationships that you're building. And we'll talk a little bit in a minute about what that looks like from a journey point of view. But again, looking at our Australian research, and this is something that I think everybody can learn from, when we asked people, if you're starting out the search for a new banking product, where do you start? And the good news for everyone in the room, because we all have goals, or you all have goals of trying to cross-sell and have multi-product relationships, started with their own first bank. They preferred the bank that they were with. So that's great, right? Awesome. But as they go through that funnel, and as they gather more and more sources of information, by the end of that process, 31% of them would choose someone else, right? So they start off with you, they go through the journey, and then 30% of them will choose someone else. So, earlier when I was talking to you guys about innovation and this sort of strange phenomenon that people see innovation as a risk, I really want you to go back to your organisations and say to your CEO, not innovating is a risk. Because what this data point is telling you is that this is no longer just an acquisition strategy. This is a retention strategy. This is a way that you keep people. Because as soon as that customer has a relationship with someone else, 83% of the time they're going to prefer them next time, not you. So it's just something that you're going to have to start really getting embedded into your organisation, that you have to sort of win this battle online and try to push as many people through as you can. Would be remiss of me not to tell you that in Australia, 60% of people actually start with search. 93% of those people start with Google, which is also very good news for us. But the next big phenomenon that I wanted to share with you, and the next big how moment for you guys to take away with you, is this concept that we've coined at Google called the zero moment of truth. Has anybody heard of the zero moment of truth? Okay, I'll play a little video for you. You can take a look and then we'll talk about it.
As marketers, we all learned our craft focusing around 3 moments. And those 3 moments became the basis of how we built our plans as marketers, how we chose our partners, and how we allocated our budgets. Now we believe there are actually 4 moments in the mental model of marketing. And it's the marketers who recognize that the world is now a 4-moment model that stand to have a competitive advantage in the marketplace.
If you are smart, you should never even launch a mass media campaign without a zero moment of truth support to it. Because we've often discovered people, when they watch your commercial, they sometimes don't remember your product or service. They will remember certain things from your commercial. So if you have a green frog, they'll actually search for green frog. So you should actually be willing to sort of show up there at that particular time. And you should incorporate, whether it's before or after your advertising, how do you actually support it with new consumer behaviors, ways of discovering things?
We're moving away from people seeking a product or a brand they want in 5 or 10 or 20 or 50 ways to actually seeking and finding that brand in tens and thousands of ways. The web presents an incredible opportunity, but also there are an enormous number of tools that now allow you to be hyper-targeted. And if there are 60 people in San Francisco right now looking for engagement rings and on the web trying to find them or trying to figure out which brand or cut to buy, you have an ability to get in front of just those 60 people because the potential consumer is not at the end of the process, rather beginning the journey. You have more of a time and opportunity to have a slightly slower dance in order to truly convince them that you're the right answer for them. And that's the fundamental shift I think a brand needs to make, is embrace this idea of fragmentation and yet leverage the tools that are available to us to show up at the right moment in front of the right person with the right message.
So that's the zero moment of truth in a nutshell. There's a really great website, Google Zero Moment of Truth, and you can download the free ebook and take a look at it. But it's a really interesting concept, particularly from a marketing perspective, because, and I guess especially for us at Search, because it kind of changes everything, right? Right now, the way we're measuring our search campaigns and most of our digital marketing campaigns is on that last click. So the only interaction that's important is the one that closes the sale. And so what I always like to do is let's take this into the offline world, right? So I walk into a branch and I say, listen, I'm just shopping around for a credit card. I actually don't want to buy one today, but I'm just wanting some information. Today, what you do online is the equivalent of that branch person turning around and saying, go away, I don't want you to talk to me. When you're ready to buy, come and talk to me. Now, would you let your branch people act that way? No. Would you like your call centre people to act that way? No. So what the zero moment of truth is really talking about is start listening and start figuring out what kind of lead indicators, what kind of data can you collect to show you where someone is in that process. And that's what Avinash is talking about here, doing that slow dance, sort of, for want of a better word, seducing the customer so that they only ever choose you. And this means that you do have to change your measurement. You also have to change your creative. You have to change the way that you're cutting and dicing your data to figure out how you can segment people into different parts of the journey. So if we look at credit cards, this was some zero moment of truth research we did in the US. What you can see, this is actually mapping out the process from a year before someone actually buys a credit card all the way through to sort of the minute, a few moments before they buy it. Now what you can see here is there's 40% of people who are kind of looking and doing some sort of research up, a year before up until a month before. That's 40% of the people that you have an opportunity to get in front of, right? So that by the time they get to the moment before, they're actually thinking of you and your brand is front of mind for them. So if you want to sort of ignore that 40%, it's kind of the equivalent of saying, just close on Monday and Tuesday, right? Does anyone here want to miss their targets by 40% next year? Don't think so. Because the people that start doing this and looking at what we're calling internally micro conversions are the people who are really going to win in this new world as people seek out more and more information. Now this chart's going to be a little bit hard to see, I think, especially for you guys at the back, but what these heat maps show is the role of search through the process. Now we've actually got these for a whole lot of other media, so if you're interested, please let us know. I think they're actually available on the website. But why I wanted to highlight this is because financial services is really different, right? So what you can see on the vertical axis is the time, is the degree of influence, and on the horizontal axis you've got time before the purchase. So let's pull out travel, for example. So probably about, a month before people are buying, search is really important. You can see that big red spot there, right? Automotive, it's actually more important. They're doing this research online and using search a lot earlier in the process, a couple of months out. But look at financial services. Search is playing a role all throughout the process, and they're all quite high up. So they're the role of search is very influential, and it's influential the whole way through that process. And so, like I said, it's up to you guys to think about what kind of content do I need to be producing? What kind of content should I be providing? What kind of, things should I be looking at in the market? What's my competitor content look like? What are the other sources of information that my customers are using before they make a decision? Because these are going to be increasingly important as people start to make financial decisions, but more importantly, while they're online, these are the people who are going to be converting online. So tend to be more profitable customers and cheaper to acquire, that's for sure. The next point that we can sort of highlight when we look deeper into these, and this is the TV, this is credit cards again, but this is the TV degree of influence for credit cards compared to search. What you can see here is that they're actually really complementary. So by no means are we saying take your budget out of everything else and just put it into search. It's about using data and looking for these sort of signals to figure out what the right mix is for you and your brand, right? It wouldn't be that difficult for you to take, say, 1,000 of your most recent customers and do this sort of a study. Tell me what you did, show me where you did what, how, and start to build those proxies to create the right measures for this sort of stuff. But you can see that about 2 to 6 days before the purchase, TV and search are actually very influential. So you've got someone who's been searching for you, then they see your TV ad and they go, bang, yeah, I'm going to do it. So you don't want to have done all that hard work, show them the TV ad, and then they go and find someone else, right? So the way you sort of start to think about the consumer media journey really has to change if you think that ZMOT's an important thing. So in Southeast Asia, we're seeing credit card queries growing at about 26% year on year. This is a huge amount of growth, and it does speak to the fact that more and more people are searching. But if I think about things like the zero moment of truth, it also suggests that people are doing more searches. They're doing, instead of doing 1 or 2, they're probably doing 4 or 5. And so that journey and that sort of slow dance that Avinash talks about is really important. So the search experience, really, if you believe zero moment of truth to be true, is not just about acquisition. So you can't measure it just as acquisition. We have to start valuing these micro conversions and start looking at that whole journey that people are going through. The 4-screen world. Now, we've already spoken quite a lot about mobile today, and by no means am I trying to downplay it, but I think this is a fairly common scene in most people's lounge rooms today. And Terry was speaking about it earlier, but each device is now starting to form its own characteristics and its own personalities. And what we're finding is that the laptop is kind of the admin workhorse, right? That's where you do your work now. It used to be the fun thing, right? The TV is the entertainer. You sit back, relax, watch the TV. And despite the tablet being this amazing mobile supercomputer that you can take around everywhere, it's actually staying at home more often than not, and it's a couch companion. It's a thing that's sitting right next to you as you're watching TV and you're doing your banking and whatever it might be. The phone, though, is the constant companion. It's always in your pocket. You're never going to leave home without it. So just in case you didn't think mobile was a big deal, and I think it's been rammed in your face quite a lot today, but there are actually more people with mobile phones than there are people with electricity and clean drinking water in the world today. So it's a big one. And when we look at some of the data points that we see at Google, the numbers are becoming really staggering, right? So this is Australian data. 18% of all the queries that we get about home loans are coming from a mobile device. 18%. So, and that's growing at about 200% year on year. So, again, if you don't think it's a big deal, it's kind of the equivalent of shut on Tuesdays, right? It's getting big. Personal loan queries, again, 18% of our total queries, and that's just up from about 7% last year. So, huge amount of growth. The story is very similar across the region. So when we look at credit card queries, they're looking at about 13% of total queries for cards in Southeast Asia, and investment queries are actually even higher. Across all of finance, Singapore, 19% of all queries coming from a mobile device. That is a huge number, right? And I keep urging you to put this into the perspective of missing your quotas by 20% or leaving 20% of the accounts that you could possibly acquire on the table, right? And then even across Southeast Asia, it's a very similar trend. So while Singapore is very advanced, we're seeing these things happen all across the region. And in my opening address, I mentioned this point about how the mobile is going to be the primary internet access point. And that's because it's actually cracked open a whole new market of people who typically wouldn't have had $1,000 to dish out on a computer, but do have money to go get a prepaid mobile phone and have that in their pocket. So the internet has just exponentially been put in the hands of thousands and millions of people, particularly across the region. So let's think about Zmot and mobile together. So I'm walking down the street, I see an ad for a credit card, I get on my phone and I search. How many of you today are actually prioritising what that experience looks like? First of all, when I'm on a phone, I probably want to call someone, right? This is an amazing... How many of you here get better conversions on the phone than you do online? I would have thought most of you would be putting your hands up, right? You want to get that customer, you want to talk to them, right? So what I've got here is an example from NAB, who typically do a very good job. But I've searched for NAB. This is the landing page that I get. It's a horrible experience. It's so small. You have to pinch and zoom. You can't see anything. I'm only ever one click away on the web, right? So I'm not happy. I click. I go back, click on the next ad. It's for Commonwealth Bank. And that's the experience that I get. Apply now. It speaks to everything. Speed, quick, what I want, on my phone, amazing. So where am I going to go as a consumer? We're even seeing that in traditional high-touch categories such as home loans that the banks in Australia are doing quite a good job of capturing these leads and using things like click to call. So the big how to take advantage of this four-screen world is to really, as Rajesh was saying before, think about that whole customer experience. So what happens when someone sees the ad, is motivated to act? What's the experience they're going to have? And are you giving them the best experience? Are you enabling them to be multi-channel? Or are you shoving them down the channel that they decided to come to you on? Because a phone's an amazing thing. You can ring, you can look on the web, you can capture a lead, lots of different things. Now, one of my clients in Australia, the Commonwealth Bank, was very kind to share this information with me. But I love this slide because A, you all have this data back in your offices, so I urge you to go and look at it. And the next time you run a big TV campaign, to do this exercise. But I have to tell you the story first. In Australia, we've just launched our own version of The Voice, right? It has been a smash hit. And the thing is, it's got this real social integration to it. So you're watching the show and there's tweets coming up on the screen and everyone's kind of tweeting because they want to see if their tweet comes up on the screen. And it's become a phenomenon, but ratings hit. So a spot on The Voice, a 30-second TV spot on The Voice, is going at around $100,000 Australian for a 30-second spot. Enormous amounts of money, right? But the reach is huge. It's about $4 million people, sorry. So my client at the Commonwealth Bank decided to do a bit of tricky analysis. And he went back and he said, well, I actually know what my customers, who are about 4 million people in Australia, are doing during the ad breaks. Now, what this chart shows is logins to internet banking that are happening. Now, the grey bars are the commercial breaks of The Voice. So you can see, in every commercial break, big spike, big spike, big spike, big spike. So not only is this a great media negotiation tool, but it's also a really big insight into this device personalities thing, right? So even if people now are staying there, they're looking at their tablet and they're doing their banking. So let's talk about the how for mobile. First of all, go back and try and do this sort of analysis. See when people are logging on, whether you can take advantage of it. But if you're sitting in the room and you're wondering how to really mobilise your mobile efforts within your organisation, start measuring it. Get yourself a scorecard. Start thinking about what users are going to want and how they're using your website and how they're accessing your site on a mobile phone today, and make sure you have a great mobile experience. If you want to check and you really want to scare the hell out of your CEO or whoever's in charge of building your mobile, you can go online to howtogomo.com, put in your website address and check out what the mobile experience is on your site. So it'll give you a report. It's very detailed. You might hate me after doing this report. But it's a really great exercise if you need to convince people internally that building a mobile site and having a great mobile experience is important. So next, choice and sharing is really accelerating. And you know, social's a really important thing that's a big buzzword right now. And when I want to sort of, I guess, reiterate here that I'm not talking about Facebook likes and all this sort of stuff. I'm really thinking about how you can socialise every experience, because I think for banks in particular, this is going to be the way you start to do relationships without relying on a branch. Okay, this is a really great opportunity for you guys to not only provide good service, but to start to make meaningful relationships. And again, what I really loved about Scott's presentation was that when you think about these kids he was talking about, they are growing up in a time where they're completely cool with building relationships online. They do it all the time. So it's not going to be a big deal for them to buy a home loan over social media in a couple of years. That's going to be, yeah, like, you mean actually you used to have to go into a bank? That's what it's going to be like. And I guess, you know, the fundamental thing here is that, you know, brands don't sell people. Brands don't sell brands. People sell brands. And when you start to think about the way you can leverage this sort of stuff, it gets pretty clever, and it actually starts to make your marketing really efficient. Because if you used to have to go and pay a TV network to reach 3 million people, if you start listening and looking at who's following you on social media and you build something up, 1 or 2 or 10 people might be able to reach 2.6 million people for you. That's the same as what a TV network used to do. So if you're looking at the right data and you're gathering the right lead indicators, then this is all sitting at your doorstep. It can create some real efficiency. And what we're talking about at Google when we speak about Google Plus isn't really about the destination, right? So it's not about having a page and a fan page. It's about socializing the web, socializing everything you do. And we like to talk about it as a social spine, I guess. So how it's starting to play out, and I fully acknowledge that probably hasn't been a huge, clear communication of this vision, so I hope this does it justice. But here you can see I'm on a Google search page, and I type in plus NAB, and I can see now that in the search results I'm starting to see NAB's Google Plus page coming up as one of the results. More importantly, if I just search for NAB, what I start to see coming up are these things called social extensions. So if I'm logged in, what I can see is that here are the people that I know who have actually +1'd NAB. So it's this sort of vote from people that I know that NAB's a good brand to be dealing with. And this is coming up in the search results. These social extensions have only been live for a couple of months, but already we're seeing about a 5 to 10% increase in click-through rate when advertisers are showing social extensions. Now, this is a really simple thing to do. Plug it in to your AdWords account, flick the switch. It's not going to hurt. And we're seeing 5 to 10% increases in conversion rates. I've seen one client in Australia getting about 14% increase in click-through rate. And then, of course, there is this page where you can start to have a dialogue with customers and share content on a much more regular basis. And I've just put the NAB example here, and what they've actually done is put their whole social team up there with their initials so that when they respond, you actually know who's responding to you. So where we see this going now, and I think the opportunity for banks is enormous with something like Google+, because we've spoken today about how CRM has become really hard, and this is a tool using something like circles where people can actually tell you what segment they're in, right? What do you want to hear about? Choose the circle you want to be in, and we'll send you great information about that. Are you a first home buyer? Are you looking to buy an investment account soon? These are the sorts of signals, and then people can drop themselves out of a circle once they've actually made that purchase. So it actually takes the onus off you. So this is another great how for you guys in terms of how you can start to social and get social, and how you can start to learn, I guess, a little bit, because in 10 years, this is going to be the norm. So it's about learning now. No one's an expert at it. So obviously, this is a campaign trying to get people to move to e-statements, right? And it was actually a video of a dad ripping up a job rejection letter in front of his baby and laughing. Now, they had an aim of getting about 1 million views in a month. In just under 2 months, they had 15 million views of that video, because it's something that's just, people want to share that joy with others. And subliminally, the message is coming through, yeah, get rid of the paper statements, let's go to... So for a campaign like that, where the objective isn't going to make you money, it's going to save you money, but it's kind of, let's try and get that message out there as quickly and cheaply as we can. That's a great idea of leveraging these social things and leveraging the behaviours that people are already doing anyway. So, the next point I wanted to make as I wrap up is that, I'd love to tell you that you're going to do all this stuff and you're going to try it and it's going to be amazing success, and then people, your customers, are going to come to you and say, great, thanks, that's awesome, thanks so much for doing that, because they're not, right? They don't do that for banks anyway, but the fact is that people's expectations are just getting higher and higher and higher, and that extraordinary is the new ordinary. It's just become a hygiene factor that you have to be amazing. On that very positive note, I guess I just wanted to reiterate to you that our big bets as a company are based on the same trends that are going to affect your business, right? Search is at our core. It's our lifeblood. It's always going to be an area that we focus on. But we really do see mobile, video, changing how consumers are connecting with brands. And at the end of the day, for you guys, it's about winning the moments that matter with your customers. The successful marketeers of the future will say, I know the moments that matter and the moments that don't. And I know how to connect with people in those moments that matter. I'm able to make better decisions, and that'll help me get bigger and faster, really quickly. So that's what we want to do at Google. That's what we want to help you with. And William and the team here are a great resource for you to tap into whenever you need help winning the moments that matter, or helping to make better decisions, or getting bigger and faster. So I hope you've enjoyed today. It's been an honour to have you here at the Google office.